we've got some information on Andy Weidl we probably want to discuss.
Yeah, so let's talk about Andy Weidl and his future, because I know we've done a lot of work on this and have some shared intel. So let's remind people, last week the Steelers conducted a lot of their final interviews for the GM jobs. They had an interview with Andy Weidl, which we discussed. That was Wednesday. Second interviews, correct. They had an interview with their in-house guy, Omar Khan, whose title is escaping me right now, but I kind of call him like the Howie Roseman of the Steelers, except he doesn't have the total say, but he's got Cap, he's got Phil. I mean, he's an administrator, a high-ranking administrator for them. He's vice president of, I think, football operations for them, I believe is his title. And then they interviewed last with Brandon Hunt, who has obviously interviewed with the Eagles too, but nothing has happened since then. So, Adam, we told people last week that a big part of this interview process was the part of Mike Tomlin's involvement. When what we understood that in order to get this job, I mean, you really have to be, Mike Tomlin has to be your ally. He has a very large presence in this decision, along with the Rooneys, the Rooney family who owns the Steelers. But Mike Tomlin's been there for a long time. He's earned that right. He's been a great coach. And so he's been a big part of this process. Now, we were told going into that there wasn't really much of a relationship between Tomlin and Andy. So Andy was really getting to know Mike Tomlin for the real know him for the first time in this interview. As it was told to us, the interview went pretty well. Andy Weidl came out of this interview thinking that it was good. He had good chemistry with the people that he met there. Things were going well. This is what we heard from people who know, and that he actually spent quite a while talking to Mike Tomlin and was able to establish a good connection there, which is really central to trying to get that job. Now, I personally, this is me now not reporting anything but speculating, knowing that franchise, I still think they're an in-house type of organization, right? And Omar Khan's been there a long time, and he's like number 2 to Colbert or 3. I don't know how you want to put it. He's a very high-ranking guy, so I'm sure he's going to get real consideration for that job.
Yeah, he's a vice president of football and business administration. He does their contracts, right. But Omar has been with him a long time. He's moved up. He got the VP role some years ago. Yeah, but by the way, Art, the person who will make the decision is Art Rooney II, who's the team
Art
president.
Rooney too.
He'll make the decision with input from everybody. But you make a really good point from we've heard from various sources. Mike Tomlin's got a lot of input. Mm-hmm. He's worked with Omar obviously for many years. So Weidl started his career with Steelers, as we know. So, and John Spytek, former Eagles executive, had his, and Ryan Cowden, who's the personnel director for the Titans, had his. So they've got a good group of people interviewing.
Yeah. So I imagine the Steelers are now going to do their diligence on the Rooneys, like you said, Art Rooney too, and Mike Tomlin are going to kind of meet and make a decision pretty soon. So we'll see what happens. One thing we heard was that Andy and Omar know each other. So it'll be interesting to see whatever happens, just because they interview all these guys doesn't mean one person has to get a job. Maybe there's room to get more than one person you like. So we'll see. I mean, if Andy really hit it off with Mike Tomlin, it sounds like there's a good chance he might get a job there with the Steelers. So we'll just have to see how they kind of work their hierarchy and restructure their front office now that Kevin Colbert is gone.
Yeah. So, I have no idea how what we had heard a couple weeks ago is that after Andy's first interview that they know each other somehow. I have no idea of how well, but it's not like they're completely like strangers or something.
Right.
But the big key here, we also heard you mention that if he's had his 2 interviews for the GM spot, there's some people around the league that we talked to over the last week or so that said that don't dismiss the possibility because he's so well thought of in the Eagles building. Excuse me, the Steelers building, obviously in the Eagles building as well. That he could be paired up as assistant GM with Omar if Omar gets the GM job, because Omar's background is not personnel like Andy's or someone else would be assistant GM. So, and if it's not Andy, maybe they pair him up with someone who really got a good personnel background. But what helps Andy, he's from Pittsburgh and he knows that organization. So good luck to him. We'll see what happens.